Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian and this is the channel Ian the Reader. Today, I have a very exciting video for you guys. It is my second update on my 30 books to read before 30 list. If you've been following me for quite some time, really like 2 years, then you'll have originally seen my 30 books to read before 30 that I posted on my 26th birthday. Last year, on my 27th birthday, I posted my first update, and today is my 28th birthday, and I'm here with another update. So happy birthday to me, and yay for an update. Yeah, so basically, I picked 30 books that I wanted to read before I turned 30 when I was 26, so I had 4 years to read it. We're at the halfway point in that timeline now. I've got 2 more years until I turn 30, and so now I'm here with my second update. And this past year didn't go as well as year number 1, let's just say that. I will go ahead and leave links to the videos previously posted in this series down below, so you can check those out if you'd like to. However, I will also, in addition to updating you guys on the books that I've read from this list, I will be making some updates to my remaining list. I think it's totally normal. Over the course of years, your reading tastes change, you try some things out, you don't end up feeling them at the time, or you have less excitement for picking them up. So I think it's totally normal for me to be changing some of these out, and I'm comfortable with that. I didn't change too many out, so a lot of these are still from the original list. That being said, I did want to talk to you guys about all the books that I still have to read over the next 2 years before I turn 30 years old. Without any further ado though, let's go ahead and jump into the video. I'm first going to be telling you guys the books that I did finish in the last year on my 30 before 30 list, which was 5 books. So yeah, of the original 30, I read 5 in the last year, which is not great, especially considering the first year I read 10. But at the same time, that means in 2 years, I read 15 of the 30. So I'm actually on track. So I'm gonna stop beating myself up about it. I did okay. Let's go ahead and talk about the books. I'm going to talk about these in the order in which I read them. I cannot remember specifically what month or time I read them, but all of these have been read within the last year. So first book is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I actually ended up reading this entire trilogy in the last year in the space of a few months, and I enjoyed myself with it. If I'm just talking about the first book though, I liked it. I won't say that I loved it as much as everybody else does. And I still kind of feel the same way about the series in general. I think that this is really considered to be one of the greatest fantasy series of all time. And I don't quite get that yet, I will say. Because like I said, I've only read the first trilogy, and I've heard that these books are better upon reread. And I've also heard that the future books, both the standalones and the Age of Madness trilogy, are absolutely incredible, particularly the Age of Madness trilogy. So I definitely plan on continuing this series and reading more in these books, and I think that I'll end up enjoying them more. However, I did enjoy this first trilogy, particularly talking about The Blade itself, but I didn't love it like everybody else did. I'd say I give it like a light 4 stars, the first book. And then the second and third get better from there. But just talking about The Blade itself, this is a grimdark fantasy following a handful of different characters, and it very much is like a character-driven story. While there is some good world building in the story, and you know, some good plot stuff as well, it's kind of a slow burn, at least in the first book. And you're focused more on the main characters and all the stuff going on within them, and their different histories that you kind of learn more about throughout the story, particularly Logan Ninefingers and Glocta, and then the other characters as well. But those two kind of have more of a past that you kind of find out more about as the story progresses, while the other characters are more in the coming of age portion of the story, where they're just kind of developing themselves and getting more experience. But those two characters in particular are ones that I really loved. And I will say that Glocta in particular was such a cool character to read through the entire trilogy. I really also liked Logan Ninefingers. I will say I liked him the most at the end of this book, and if you've read this book, you know why, and I enjoyed him even more in the second and third book. But this first book was definitely a little bit slower than I expected. And while I did enjoy the characters a lot, the plot itself was just not one that I was easily immersed in, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the hype had led me to believe I was going to. So overall, for The Blade itself, I gave it 4 stars. I'm glad that I read it, and I don't necessarily know. No, I would say with this one, I would have read it anyway, because I did end up reading this whole trilogy with my brothers, but I'm glad that I read it and that I included it on this list, because it's definitely one that I'm glad I read before I turned 30. Book number 2 that I read in the last year is The Eye of the World, another fantasy series here. This one by Robert Jordan, of course, the first book in the Wheel of Time. I've since read the second book as well, and I plan on reading the third one soon. However, I have mixed feelings. So the first book in this series I actually really enjoyed. I think I actually gave it a 4.5. I was impressed by it. I know that it was very much inspired by and very clearly not copying, but following the steps of the Lord of the Rings quite a bit. You start out with this young character who has not really a lot of background in magic or in adventuring or anything. He's basically like a farm boy, and he is thrust into the situation where he has to go on the run with a group of characters because these bad people are after him, and it's very much the same setup as the Fellowship of the Ring. But then it kind of goes in a different direction a little bit by the end of the book, and then the second book in particular, it starts to deviate from that a bit. I have such a hard time determining how I feel about the series as a whole, and how I feel about continuing. So I liked the first book quite a bit. I like the second book less. And it's now been probably 8 or 9 months since I read one of those. And while I want to continue, I'm also so nervous because people say like books like 7, 8, 9, and 10 are just a slog and are not fun and just aren't great. And they're like 1,000 pages each. So I have a hard time convincing myself to commit to such a long series and literally reading like thousands of pages that I'm not going to enjoy very much, when there are so many other books and series I could be reading. So I am so glad that I have now read the first couple of books in this series. As a fantasy fan, I feel like it's essential, but I am not 100% convinced that I'm going to be reading much more in this series. We'll see. But there are other books I want to read sooner. So that's how I feel about The Eye of the World and The Wheel of Time in general. The third book that I read for my 30 books to read before 30 list in the last year is Rules of Civility by Immortals. I liked this book. Unfortunately, it's another one that I didn't end up loving as much as I thought I was going to. Before reading this book, I had read 2 other novels by this author, those being A Gentleman in Moscow and The Lincoln Highway, both of which were 5 stars for me and made my best of the year list when I read them. I had similar hopes for Rules of Civility. Not necessarily that it would be my favorite of his books, but that it would be a 5-star and that I would ultimately end up putting it on my favorite books of the year list. I liked this book. I didn't love it. This book really follows a young woman living in New York City in the early 1900s, maybe to mid 1900s. I can't quite remember the timing of it. But it's just about her and her friendships with this one woman and this man as well, who she meets at the start of the story on New Year's Eve, and their friendship kind of is the catalyst for the story beginning. This book really is quite meandering. I wouldn't say that it has a very solid plot. It's more about a woman just kind of exploring her sense of self and also her relationships as well, her friendships and what she wants and what she likes and things like that. And I think, he's done this in another novel as well. This is his debut novel, so he's definitely gotten better with each book that he's published, in my opinion. But in A Gentleman in Moscow, we follow a character who is isolated to this hotel, and it follows him for a number of years as he just kind of grows older, and I think it really worked very well in that book, and I don't think it worked as well in this first one. I did like the setting of New York during this time period. I enjoyed some of the characters that we met, but ultimately I just found the plot to be a bit too meandering, and it didn't work for me as much as I wanted it to. So I would give it 4 stars, probably, which on its own is fine, but considering I gave the other 2 books that I've read by this author 5 stars, a little bit disappointed. I would say of the 3 that I've talked about thus far, I was the most disappointed in this one. But again, I still had a good time, and I totally get why people enjoy this book so much. The 4th book that I read is Gilead by, holy smokes, Mary Robinson? I don't remember. Her name's here. So this book is quite moving, and I liked it quite a bit. I made the mistake of listening to it on audio, and I think it's one that I would have much rather taken my time with and read physically, but I didn't. And that's where we're at. So this follows an older man who is coming to the end of his life because he's found out that he is sick. And the whole premise of this book is him writing letters in a way to his young son who is not going to be around for. He's not going to get to watch him grow up the way he would like to. And so this older man is a preacher, and he's lived in this small community for a long time. And it's really just like his musings on life and purpose and love and so many other things. And I think that it's absolutely beautiful. I think the writing is amazing, and I do think that there is a lot of good stuff going for this book. But again, I think that my listening to it, rather than reading it and taking my time with it, hindered my overall enjoyment. I wish that I just let myself read it as slowly as I needed to, because I think it's one that does lend itself to a slower pace, because it is a slow-paced book, and it's almost like you have a handful of letters from someone, it's almost like it's your father writing to you. And and you could rush through them, or you could really pick it up when the time is right for you. There's not like a really super engaging plot that drives the story, and so I think it's best lent to taking your time with, and I didn't do that. So I do plan on revisiting this one. I gave it 4 stars at the time because I do think it is worthy of at least a 4-star, if not a 5-star, but I didn't have a 5-star experience with it, and I need to give this book another try, probably a few years down the line, maybe when I'm a bit older. I think it could definitely be one that I enjoy even more. But for now, Gilead gets 4 stars. And the final book that I read off of my 30 before 30 list is Dune by Frank Herbert. And this is a 5-star. Thank God, at least one of them was a 5-star. So I loved Dune quite a bit. I've talked about it quite a bit already. I've mentioned it in wrap-ups. I've mentioned it in my top 10 of the year so far video. But this is amazing. I really love the world that Frank Herbert has built within this book. I have yet to read Dune Messiah, but I want to very soon. It's like right up here. But I will definitely pick that up soon. I think that Arrakis and the Atreides house and everything else going on within this story is incredible. I love all of the political stuff going on within this science fiction world. I love the plot. I love the world that he has built with all the terminology. I love the action. The plot's great. It's really just a powerhouse of a novel, and I think that it is so worthy of all of the acclaim that it gets. I think the adaptations that have been made recently by Denis Villeneuve are absolutely phenomenal as well, and such accurate and worthy adaptations. I think they really do the book justice. And while it's incredible to see everything on screen, I think the books have equal impact in the eye of the reader, because it's just so descriptive and so original. I think it's so great. Even though there have been so many copycats since this book was published, namely Star Wars, I think that this book stands on its own and has so much originality to offer, and it is incredible. It's a really great book. If you love sci-fi, you have to read this book. Even though it's a bit intimidating and there's a lot of terminology you have to really get into, it's totally worth it. I highly recommend Dune. It is definitely my favorite of the 5 books that I read off of this list. Okay, so now we get to the second part of this video, in which I update you on the remainder of my 30 books to read before 30. Like I said, a few of these books are brand new to this list. I have replaced the ones that I was no longer really interested in prioritizing. Not to say that I don't plan on reading them at some point, but they're no longer as much of a priority to me. And these are the 15 books that I absolutely want to prioritize reading over the next few years. Let's jump in. First up, we have Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. This one is calling to me. I really want to read this one very soon. I've been thinking about The Bluest Eye a lot, which is my favorite Toni Morrison book of the ones that I've read. And I have a feeling that I'm going to enjoy this one as much or more. She's amazing, such an incredible writer that has made such an impact on literature in the world. And Song of Solomon is definitely one that I need to get to. Next up, we have Shogun by James Clavell. I'm scared of this book. I know that it's good. I know that it's action-packed. I know that there was just an amazing adaptation that was made. I haven't watched it because I want to read it first, but do you see this? It's like stupid long. Over 1,000 pages. And it's small font, man. Like, look how tiny that is. It's not even joking. This is a very serious book that wants to kill me, and it might, but I do want to read it. Next up is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This is the one book that I need to read above all else this year. It will happen. It will. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's got to happen. Next up is another one that I'm super intimidated by, and that is The Collected Stories of Vladimir Nabokov. I'm scared of this because I've tried to read it and get into it numerous times, and it just hasn't happened. And I even planned on buddy reading it with my aunt and reading one a week, because I thought that would be the most plausible way for me to actually make progress on it, and I didn't do that. It's almost 700 pages, but I've heard this is absolutely incredible. I just need to get into his writing and keep at it and not put other things first. So this will happen, probably. Next up, we have Americana. This is one that has been all over my radar lately. I don't know why, it just keeps popping up. I've heard it's an incredible story, and it's got quite an amazing love story in it as well, which I'm always down for, like an epic literary love story. So hopefully I end up loving this. This will be my first by this author, but I have high hopes. Next is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I wouldn't say that it is the one that I'm most excited about reading of all his books, but it's the one that I feel I need to read the most. I think it's one of his most acclaimed, and it's also the first one I ever bought by him. So this is the one that's sticking on the list. Next is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. I've been seeing this in a few random places. I wouldn't say I've been seeing it all over the place, but it just keeps coming back to me. It says a novel of Cupid and Psyche. or maybe Psych. I don't know how you say that because I'm a dummy. But I really have been wanting to read more of C.S. Lewis. What I've read by him, I have absolutely loved, and I've heard that this book is absolutely beautiful. And I found it for like 50 cents at my library, so I snatched it up, and it has quickly shot up to the top of my 30 before 30 list. So yeah, buddy. Next is the only Stephen King book on this list, the one that I'm most intimidated by, and that is Under the Dome. It is a chonky book, and yeah, I'll read it soon, probably. Oh my gosh. Then we have The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. I have seen so much buzz for this book over the last year and a half or so since it came out, and I want to read it. I also really want to read his book, Cutting for Stone. Both of those are ones that I own and that I really want to read, and it was really a toss-up which one I was going to put on here, but I'm hoping to read Cutting for Stone soon anyway, because it's on my 24 books to read in 2024 list. And this is one that hopefully I'll just prioritize by the time I turn 30. 2 years, I can do it. Next up, thank God, I included a short one on this. It's Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. This one in particular I've wanted to read for numerous years. I keep putting it on TBRs and then not reading it. And I wanted to add a short book to this list and a Ray Bradbury book, so this is the one that I added. So hopefully I read it and adore it. It's supposed to be like one of the quintessential summer books, so it's summertime. Maybe I'll just squeeze it in anyway. Then we have the behemoth Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Another one that is greatly intimidating, but I think I will ultimately end up loving once I get to it and really just commit. I have to commit. That's my problem is I start books. Half of these I've read like 30 or 40 pages of, but then I get distracted and I read other things. So I need to stop getting distracted. I see a bookmark just dropped out of there. I have a problem. I need to stop getting distracted and just commit to this and not read anything else until this is done. It'll happen one day. Next up is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. If you were to go back and watch my original 30 before 30 video, I was so confident that I was going to read this very soon. I had already started it, and I was like, maybe I'll finish this next week or something like that. And here we are 2 years later, and I have not continued. I have not opened this book since then. So I'll read it soon, I swear. Then we have The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles by Haruki Murakami. I am reading my first Murakami novel this month, Norwegian Wood, but this is one that I'm a little bit more intimidated by and a little bit more heavily anticipating. It was a toss-up between this one and 1Q84 or IQ84. I don't know how that, I think it's 1Q84. But that one just scares the living crap out of me. Like, it's too long. And so I thought this was nice, long, but not like stupid long, and I've heard really good things about it. So yeah. Next up is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I'm really intimidated by this book as well, just because I've heard it is ruthless and should be read slowly, but I will read it at some point because it is one of the greatest American novels of all time, evidently. When I work up the courage, it'll happen. Then we have The Count of Monte Cristo. This one, like Don Quixote, is one that is super intimidating to read, but I've heard is actually quite fun and readable, and I just have to commit to it and make it the book that I'm reading, and then I'll manage to get through it. I absolutely know it. And last but not least is what I would consider like my white whale. People talk about that, like from Moby Dick, you know, the book that you're forever chasing, that you want to take down someday, that is just so intimidating that you've tried and tried and tried to read and you have not yet done it. And it's kind of an unexpected one for me because I have read 2 of the 3 books by this author and gave 5 stars to both of them. And I keep trying to get through this book and failing. I think I've even made it like halfway before. The book I'm talking about is The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. I debated even putting this on this list because I thought for a minute there that I was just going to DNF this for good. But I think I will like it. I just have to be in the right headspace for it, maybe. I keep trying to force myself through it. And maybe if I just wait, I'll end up loving it. Or maybe I should have taken it off this list and not forced myself at all and just gotten to it when I wanted to. But we're here. It's happening. I'm going to read this one day, dadgummit. It's going to happen. Please. Okay, that's it. Those are the 15 books now on my 30 before 30 list. I've got 2 years to read them, so hopefully I do that. That's the plan. I'm feeling less confident now that I've gone through all these. They're all so long, except like 2. What have I done? I've got 2 years. It'll be fine. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you love any of these books. Of the 15 remaining on my 30 before 30 list, which ones are you excited to see me prioritize? I don't know. I'm excited about all of them. I wouldn't say that there's one in particular that I think is going to outshine the others. There are some really great books in here. I know it, and I'm so excited to finally read them. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.